Um, so before we dive in, just a few kind of housekeeping notes. If we want you to be involved here, so a lot of it is going to be some of us sharing, but a lot of us we're going to be asking you to kind of consider things. So Q&A box, make sure that's open for you, and also the chat. Let's see, I believe we are all able to chat, but you're able to chat to us. So if you want to type in the chat, if your Q&A box is not working, you can do that as well. We love questions and comments, but we will have a time for questions at the end. And if you are here and you need some Chinese support, I believe we do have another platform for you. 如果需要中文服务的话，可以用这个二维码。And yeah. And if for some reason Zoom pops out on you, we are also on YouTube today. So if you want to have that link ready, take a screenshot of the QR code in case Zoom pops out. But if you can stay in Zoom, that's awesome because that's where we're doing most of our sharing and talking, and that'll just be a little bit easier. Great. Well, why don't we start? Again, for those of you who don't know, my name is Gloria. I am one of the co-founders of Initial View, host of Tuesday Talks. I always ask my guests to share a fun fact, so I'm going to share a quick fun fact about myself. I have three teenagers, and one of them did this cool science program this year, and I got to do an open house last week, and I held a boa constrictor. That's my fun fact of the day. My kids joke that I don't like dogs and cats, but I do like amphibians and reptiles, which is partially true. Great. Well, without further ado, Chris, why don't you start us off? And unmute. You're muted, Chris.
Sorry, I have three cats, not three kids, and one of them very well make an appearance, at least one of them, during this evening. So we'll have a feline perspective weighing in on admissions outcomes as well.
And Chris is a principal
Yes,
at
I am the foreign principal at Shanghai Hongrun Boyuan School. So we're a secondary school USAP curriculum in Shanghai and a proud Initial View partner school.
Yay, thank you. All right, Justin.
Hello, my name is Justin Money. I'm the Director of Recruitment at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And my fun fact, I hold a first degree black belt in Taekwondo, something I got about 25 years ago.
Amazing. Um, okay, Libby.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Good morning from Brunswick, Maine. My name is Libby Bergeron. I use she, her pronouns, and I am an Associate Dean of Admissions with Bowdoin College, which is located in Brunswick, Maine. My fun fact is that since moving up to Maine, I've become an avid vegetable gardener. So that's what you'll find me doing in the summer.
Nice. What's growing right now?
We just put a ton of peppers, shishito, tomatillos, jalapeno and poblano peppers. But yes, tomatillos, cherry tomatoes, regular tomatoes, lettuce, onions, artichokes. We'll see what happens.
Awesome. Okay, Grace.
Hello, everyone. My name is Grace Robertson Lloyd. I use she, her pronouns, and I work for Grinnell College. And this is my ninth year. I'm an associate director of admission at Grinnell. And my fun fact, because kind of going along the reptile and pet route, but I'm very allergic to cats and dogs. I love cats and dogs, but it means that now I own leopard geckos. And so I have a leopard gecko named Mika, who is behind me in her tank. And yeah, so keeping in with the theme.
Very fun. I would love to pet your gecko. Um, well, awesome. Okay, well, and we're going to talk very quickly about the colleges that our friends are from. And let's see, put this PowerPoint back up. So, Libby, go ahead and share.
Awesome. So yes, we're back in Brunswick, Maine. So yes, I am here to talk about Bowdoin College, which is a small liberal arts college of around 1,900 undergraduate students located in Brunswick, Maine. I always emphasize, as a small liberal arts college, we are just an undergraduate institution. We have no graduate programs or graduate students on campus, which means that all of the resources of Bowdoin are dedicated to the undergraduate. About 11% of our students have an international background. So that includes both F1 visa holders, but also US citizens who may have been educated abroad. Of just F1 visa holders, we sit around 7%. We have over 40 majors and minors. Some of our more popular majors, in no particular order: government and legal studies, economics, biology, English, history, psychology, neuroscience. I always say we're all over the place in the best way, in a true liberal arts college way. Our students are really interested in engaging across the curriculum, and about 50% of our students will double major, which means that they are choosing more than one major in their second year, which is when you're required to finally decide what you want to study. Our location in Maine, which is in the top northeast corner of the United States, is a big part of our kind of culture at Bowdoin. And Brunswick is located right along the coast. So we're about 20 minutes from the ocean. We're 20 minutes from state parks, and about 2 hours from a national park, which makes it really easy to do academic research outside, but also to engage for hiking, skiing. We get a wonderful winter in Maine. So really kind of outdoor recreation and academic exploration are a huge part of the experiential opportunities available to Bowdoin students. You'll hear a lot about the common good at Bowdoin, which was really just a commitment to thinking about how your education can ultimately be in service of others and benefiting locally, nationally, internationally, bettering spaces around you. So we have the McKean Center for the Common Good at Bowdoin, because Joseph McKean was our first president who talked about this commitment to the common good. So it's a center committed to helping students think about practical applications for your majors, for kind of your area of study, for your ultimate career goals. It's volunteerism, it's fellowships, it's thinking about bringing kind of your knowledge and sharing it with the world. So if you are kind of someone who's thinking about initiatives larger than yourself, the McKean Center could be an awesome place for you to land. I always like to emphasize, in terms of student aid at Bowdoin, we are need blind for all applicants regardless of citizenship, which means that we are not looking in the admissions process whether you and your family have indicated you're applying for financial aid. That is not a consideration in our admissions decision-making process. If admitted, we meet 100% of a student and their family's determined need, and we meet that need with grants and not loans. So that's money you do not have to pay back to Bowdoin. And this is our fourth year of the Digital Excellence Commitment, which gets wrapped up into student aid. But that means that all incoming students receive a new MacBook, iPad, and an Apple Pencil to make sure that all students are squarely in the technological age with us and able to participate fully in the life of the institution. My final note, a wonderful gift from Reed Hastings, who is the co-founder of Netflix. He is a Bowdoin alumni, and in the past couple of months, he recently donated a pretty significant amount of money to Bowdoin to start the Hastings Initiative for AI and Humanity. Artificial intelligence is here. We're using it, and we're trying to think as a small liberal arts college about ways to use it ethically, and to think about kind of the humanistic lens for artificial intelligence. So we're really grateful to Reed Hastings for giving that money to Bowdoin to kind of spearhead initiatives in the small liberal arts college space for thinking about using artificial intelligence in ethical ways. So we're excited about that, and happy to talk more about Bowdoin, but I also want to talk about the admissions process. So let's pass it on to my colleagues and get going.
All right, well, hello again, everybody. Let me tell you a little bit about Carnegie Mellon University. Carnegie Mellon is a medium-sized private research university. Our undergraduate student population is approximately 7,500 students. About 15,000 students overall, if you include our graduate and PhD populations. The university brings in an incoming first year class of about 1,750 or so students each year. And our undergraduate student population varies between 15 to 20% international in each of our incoming classes. The university has seven distinct colleges in no particular order. Those colleges include our School of Computer Science, our College of Engineering, the Mellon College of Science, the Tepper School of Business, the Heinz College, which offers programs in public policy and information systems, the Dietrich College, which is home to our humanities and social sciences, and our College of Fine Arts, which offers both visual and performing arts programs. With these seven distinct colleges, Carnegie Mellon is a very broad place. We have programs from a BFA in musical theater that is the United States' oldest theater conservatory, to very technical degrees, over 75 different majors and 90 different minors, and a lot of innovative opportunities for you to explore across these colleges. So whether you're looking at a minor or an additional major, which about 50 and 20% of our students respectively do, or you're looking for innovative electives in fields like animation or sound design or learning media, Carnegie Mellon could be a good place for you. You'll find that we're located in the city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We are an urban campus just a couple of miles from the downtown neighborhood. But we do have a couple hundred acres. So you're going to find a lot of green space on our campus that supports about 300 student-led organizations, 19 Division III varsity sports, and some really amazing traditions that bring our community together throughout the year. So thanks for this moment to introduce the university, and looking forward to chatting with you a little bit about the application process in a few moments.
Awesome, thank you. And last but not least, Grinnell College. So if you have not heard of Grinnell, we are a small private liberal arts and sciences college based in Iowa. And we're in a small town, so we are definitely not a metropolitan campus, but it helps us really emphasize the idea of community, togetherness, and really knowing the people who are both at the school with you, but also living in this town. You get to know the professors, you get to know the staff on a very different level, being in such a small community. We're also known for being an incredibly international campus, with 20% of our students not holding U.S. citizenship. We have all 50 U.S. states, over 85 citizenships represented on our campus, and U.S. News has ranked us in the top 10 most international liberal arts and sciences colleges in the United States. The big difference between us and other liberal arts and sciences colleges is the fact that we have something called an open curriculum. At Grinnell, there is only one required class outside of the requirements of a student's major in order to graduate from the college. At most institutions, you will have a list of courses, usually called a core curriculum or general education requirements. And those will basically be things that you must complete in order to get your degree on top of your major as well. Those core classes might not be required of your major or even related to your major. And so at Grinnell, we wanted to make sure students could focus on what they love. That's why there's only one required class. It is a writing and reading intensive course that prepares students with the skills that they need to be successful as a student at Grinnell. But outside of that class, students can take what they want. It's the reason that actually now over a third of students double major at Grinnell College, and often in completely unrelated departments like physics and music or computer science and studio art. It's also the reason that students are able to have so much flexibility and get clarity within the curriculum. And so that's why we always like to talk about this difference of this open, individually advised, flexible curriculum. And the last big thing I always like to mention is just at Grinnell, we are a school that really emphasizes, again, individualization of every student. Every student starts from day one with 3 advisors. You get an academic advisor who is a professor. You get a career advisor from day one who's going to help prepare you for postgraduate success, whether that's grad school, whether that's getting a job. They're going to help you throughout your journey with achieving internships and research opportunities that'll help you get that graduate success, postgraduate success. And then you also start off with a student life advisor. And as an international student, you actually get two of those student life advisors. So one will be someone who lives in your dorm, and one will be an older international student who will work with you and just make sure that you have someone you can go to with your questions. We understand that going to college, no matter how prepared you feel you are, is a huge transition, especially when you're far from home. And so through these student life advisors, your career advisor, and your academic advisor, you have people looking out for you academically, socially, and on the postgraduate front to make sure that you're always supported and you're never alone. And so with that, I will pass it along to get started talking about the application process. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm going to put a quick poll up here because we want to know who you are too. So go ahead and tell us who you are, and that will help us a little bit as we start this conversation. I'm going to pass it on very soon to my friend Chris when we get started with our activity. And for those of you who haven't gotten the materials yet, I'm putting a link in the chat. You are able to access our case study through that link. But before we dive in, the talk's name is The Art of Holistic Review. And I know that a lot of you who are on this journey, there's right now we're still waiting for this poll. About a third of you are students. And you may or may not have heard this term holistic review as you think about applications. So we just want to really quickly kind of define what that means. It looks a little bit different in a lot of institutions. So I'm glad that I have three different colleges here to kind of talk through this. But I always kind of put this puzzle up. It's not the perfect illustration of what holistic review is, but it does kind of inform that it isn't just one piece that determines whether or not someone gets into a college. So, friends, would you like to give a little bit of color of what holistic review means in your offices?
I'm happy to get started. I know I feel like we all just unmuted at the same time. So I'll just get started a little bit. Yeah, I mean, holistic review, as Gloria mentioned, might look different at each institution. Maybe we're looking at each of these pieces a little bit differently, or even like looking at these pieces in a different order. But everything that you're seeing or should be seeing on your screen right now, from the transcript to your letters of recommendation to any essays and extracurriculars you share with us, all of those matter in the application process just as much as the other pieces. Transcript, we want to make sure that you are academically prepared for our institutions, that you're going to jump in and thrive in the classroom and take advantage of all of the academic opportunities available at each of our institutions. But we also want to know that you're a good person. I always say, just to kind of put it plainly, are you kind? When you're done with your kind of problem set in class, do you turn to your peer and see if they need any help? What activities are you engaged with outside of school? Do you like to make music with your friends? Are you, playing a sport with your friends as a hobby? Do you like to read? Those things all matter because you will be in school, obviously, in our institutions, but you'll also have a lot of free time to engage in Maine, in Pittsburgh, in Iowa. Like, all of our institutions have different things to offer. So we're looking at how are you going to jump into our institutions, and each of our institutions might be looking for something a little bit different because our cultures are different. What we have to offer is different. So we're really trying to look at all of these pieces to get a full sense for who you are, so we can get a sense for who you'll be at our colleges. But Justin or Grace, if you have other things to add.
No, Libby, I think that was a really fantastic introduction to holistic review. I'll just add that, I always think of it as like a two-step process, right? There are two keys that need to be turned. The first is an academic key, and that's the first components that Libby mentioned: your transcript, your standardized testing, the courses you're taking. And the second key is the one about community and who you are and who you would be to your classmate, your lab mate, and your roommate. And I think it's always important to think of it in that way of a two-step process, right? If you don't show academic admissibility or fit, community impact is not going to be a reason that we would select a student absent that academic fit, or vice versa, a student that is stellar academically, but is maybe not showing the right community fit or potential for our campus. Would not be a student that we would ultimately select. So the holistic process is all about all these different pieces of information that funnel into these two very important kind of parallel questions that we're trying to answer.
I feel like you guys covered it really well. And I definitely agree that at a baseline academically, that is where we start at. And we are looking for not just good classmates, but also good roommates, good teammates, you know. And I think it's important to remember that this process is all designed to look at you as a whole human being, not just your grades, but your grades are very important. Everything counts, and it does start at that baseline of we need to make sure, because it's not it's a disservice to a student to accept someone who cannot succeed at our institutions. But then it goes beyond that because we are selective institutions, especially the ones represented here today. And so it isn't just baseline, it's more than that. It's these other elements that tell us how you fit. And so I think, yeah, Libby and Justin did a really good job encapsulating that.
Wonderful. And we're not going to spend tons of time on this, but just for people's benefit, like a lot of times when we do our college applications, we just kind of send them out and then we think there's just this like magic thing that happens and then boom, you get you get a decision. And so I just wanted to put this up here. I know that offices have different ways to handle it, but often we hear these terms readers and committee. And so if y'all could just real briefly describe what the process is like in your office, just real brief, and people can ask more questions about that later.
We practice at Carnegie Mellon what you would call file review. So it's a first reader, perhaps a second reader, and then there's a final committee that reviews the scoring and the work of those readers in ultimately selecting our class.
Bowdoin does engage with committee-based evaluation, which means that two readers are looking at the same file at the same time. So I will never be looking at a file by myself. I will always be in conversation with someone, kind of depending upon where the file is in the world. So I always say I read for students who go to school in Asia. So I will be looking at the academic pieces there primarily and what the kind of recommendations usually have to say. And then my colleague will be looking at the personal statement, the extracurriculars, also helping me with the recommendations. And then we come together to talk about it and send it along to committee.
And we do kind of a mix of both, but primarily the first reader and the second reader process that Justin described is what Grinnell College follows. But there are some situations where we'll do committee-based evaluation, which is all to say, isn't this so confusing? And I'm really sorry, but just know that there are always going to be multiple people looking at your file. It's never just one person in a silo. And that allows for more diverse perspectives as they are reviewing your file to be able to come to that conclusion on whether or not a student is admitted. It's never just one person making this decision. And in all of our cases, it does result in this final decision as a committee or as a group.
Awesome. Okay, so now you have some background. Now you have some thoughts on how review or application review might happen at an institution. And Chris is going to get us started on our activity. So make sure you have your materials out.
Great. Thank you, Gloria. And thank you especially to Libby, Grace, and Justin for joining us and participating. I would say, too, in the holistic review process, individual admissions officers are reading for an institution, which is to say they are representing as professionals the institutional interests as defined by their college or university. So, sometimes I'll have a student come to me maybe tomorrow and be like, well, Chris, do you think I should start gardening if I really want to go to Bowdoin, or I should, practice karate to get into Carnegie Mellon? And as much as any of our friends or Grace would be tickled to know someone has a gecko, that is not, the priority in how admissions officers see and understand students. So today I'm happy to be moonlighting as the Dean of Admissions at Red Brick University. Um, Ideally, you have seen the profile and have a bit of an understanding about the scope and values of our institution. So we are a private institution, a liberal arts and sciences university, with additional programs in architecture, engineering, and computer science. And this institution really looks at using rigorous academic inquiry to help people solve real world problems for the benefit of humanity. Our focus and our readers' priorities is thinking about students who are going to engage in seminar-style discussion-based learning. So, Gloria, if we can go to the next slide, this will give us a bit of an understanding of how our previous admitted class has looked here at Red Brick. So we're a highly selective institution. We take about half of our students through early decision, and we are very fortunate to be completely need blind in the admissions process. So when our admissions officers are reviewing cases today, financial need will not be a priority. While we are test optional, we do have fairly high standardized test scores. I would also say that for our committee simulation, a couple of important things to note. Never, ever does the college or university only have 3 applicants. We have 3 applicants in this case for expediency and for having a conversation. In this scenario, we could imagine that we're getting down to the wire. We're just shaping our class, and we have found that we have space for 1 additional applicant. So we have 3 excellent students who will be reviewed. The task of our admissions committee will be to accept one of our students. We will be offering another student a place on the wait list. And then a 3rd student, unfortunately, will not be denied. So we just saw a comment pop up. And so as the Red Brick Dean, I will answer this question. I think, as our guest said, there isn't a specific order of importance, although academics obviously is first and foremost. I like to say when I talk to students, your academic credentials, your transcripts, the rigor of your courses, it's a bit like your skeleton, right? You need to have strong inner strength in order to be successful at a highly selective institution. However, if we were to look at an X-ray, if you had an X-ray of me and an X-ray of Justin, unless you were a trained radiologist, you probably wouldn't be able to tell too much about us. In terms of then trying to get a picture of who someone is, that sense of their activity, how they use their time, the way they build community, how they engage with their peers, who they are as a person. That's what we'll be trying to understand in this review process. First and foremost, are they academically exceptional? Will they thrive in a demanding academic environment? And then, based upon that, how will they contribute? How will they use the resources of our institution? Because at Red Brick, we're very fortunate to have tremendous resources that empower students and allow them to do good in the world. So we want to find students who are going to utilize those resources, engage with peers, engage with faculty, and make the most of their education. So that's how Red Brick will be conducting the review process. One other question perhaps is about any sort of minimum GPA requirements. And the answer is no. However, you can see based on the profile that on average students have been very successful in their academic experiences. So we will see, I think, usefully in our conversation based on the profile of these applicants, grades are viewed. I sometimes have conversations with our faculty about grades and what they represent. If a student makes enormous improvement in a challenging class, they perhaps should be rewarded differently than a student who has not put in additional effort over the course of the semester. there again is how teacher recommendations, for example, can really bring to life how a student works in a classroom, how they engage with their learning. So I think, Gloria, could we perhaps zoom over to the initial profiles? And I think we'll let our admissions committee present. So the structure for this evening will be the three candidates will be presented. We'll have a chance for you as an audience to engage in a poll, share your opinions. Then we'll have a little bit of discussion amongst our participants and see where they might weigh in.
Great. So we are jumping right in with our first applicant. We've got Fareed Ahmed at Tunis Global Academy. Basic kind of information. They're male identifying of Sudanese, nationality, and their intended majors right now are economics and political science. So initially, I'm thinking good fit for a liberal arts college, thinking critically about the, economics and political science match there. Um, Academically, the pieces that we're looking at, and that's, I will say, usually what I jump to initially when I'm looking at an application. So in looking at the transcript, you'll see their first year is just classes with a P next to it. So we just have kind of passing grades as they transitioned from school in a refugee camp, which the counselor helpfully gives us context for. And then they transitioned to Tunis Global Academy. That first year at Tunis Global Academy in 10th, you'll see is a little bit bumpier. They've got a couple C's, one B, and then three A's, so a mix. But then once they transition fully to the A-level curriculum in 11th, and we are given the predicted A-level scores of an A star, two A's, and one B, they're doing really well. And actually, as Grace mentioned, and Justin kind of added to in the Q&A, that upward trend is really great to see, and really helpful for us to see that, once they kind of get their bearings at our institutions, they might take off. And the counselor, again, gives us really helpful context that the school in the refugee camp, the rigor at Tunis Global Academy was very different, and adjusting to kind of cultural life at this new institution kind of added to a lot. So I'll also note taking four A levels, we see most students taking three. So the fact that they're taking four is nice to see. And then while we're test optional, we do have a TOEFL of 103, which is usually above the baseline of 100 that most institutions are looking for. So 103 is nice to see. In terms of extracurriculars and engagement and the personal statement, I always note significant family responsibility. They do note that they are childcare support for three younger siblings all year for 15 hours a week. And then they have two part-time jobs, but one of them is full-time during breaks. And that is helpful to know what they're balancing on top of schoolwork and on top of family responsibility. So then I'm also impressed that they are a co-captain of the soccer club in 11th. They're a lead actor in theater. They enjoy reading periodicals on international affairs, which matches with their interests. And then this migrant community support work that they're doing, providing resources for displaced people in Tunis, that shows a lot of empathy and kind of community connection to me. So I'm really impressed by what they've been able to engage with in their kind of new community. Personal statement, a lot of intellectual curiosity, and again, just showing a lot of empathy, thinking about kind of their own lived experience and the lived experience that they see in their work. I believe that's the Four Seasons Hotel, and just thinking about kind of using their knowledge and finding ways. I found the line, I want to find ways that prosperity will lift the many and continue to propel greater fortune for the world, and thinking about how they're just gaining knowledge to kind of benefit and kind of continue to kind of grow the world around them. So those kind of ideals feel like a really good fit also for Red Brick University that has this multi-billion-dollar Center for Global and Environmental Studies coming. So it could be, again, a really nice match for us. And then finally, the counselor recommendation just really emphasized impressive resilience, motivation, and strength of character. The community has really gotten behind him. And they also, again, just emphasize, yes, the transition to Tunis Global Academy was a little bumpy, but they're naturally smart. They are putting their nose to the grindstone, as we say, and really doing the work and showing that they are a good community member, jumping into theater, and they're excited to be kind of fully participating in the life of the school. So they have no reservations introducing us to him and Red Brick Academy. So I will pass it along to our next applicant.
All right, let me introduce you to and give you a summary of the second candidate that you'll be considering today. Maria is a student at American Foundation School in Rio de Janeiro. Maria is female identifying and of both Brazilian and French heritage, and is considering majoring in the fields of sociology and literature. So again, showing some good academic interest and fit for an institution like Red Brick. Digging into Maria's academic background, Maria is attending an IB school, is taking higher level courses in literature, global politics, and environmental science. I do make note there that the rigor in literature and global politics is really appropriate to those intended majors of sociology and literature. So we're seeing some consistency, some academic fit there. Is predicting a pretty strong final result of a 41 for the IB. And digging a little deeper, I included a snapshot of a piece of the transcript here. You see that some of Maria's strongest results are coming in courses like literature, English, some of the fields that are most closely related to that intended area of study. So again, reinforcing the fit that I see for the field. Maria has taken the IELTS to demonstrate language proficiency and scored a 7.5. Again, I would assume fulfilling the requirements for an institution like Red Brick, a 7.5 for most institutions that are following the Common European Framework guidance will fulfill an academic language proficiency requirement. Maria, outside of the classroom, as I start thinking about what kind of a roommate, a lab mate, a classmate they might be, I see some themes in Maria's engagement outside of the classroom. Maria is an advocate, and Maria has shared a lot of pro-social motivation, care for others in their community. Maria has also been a leader. I see a lot of sustained involvement and growing roles and responsibility within those organizations. Pulled out a little bit of information from the essay here, which focused on some advocacy work within Rio, and specifically some advocacy work that Maria had been doing with the sex worker community in their city. And really shares about wanting to give voice to a community, again, reinforcing those themes of advocacy and pro-social motivation. Finally, a couple of notes from the counselor recommendation. Maria is very talented with languages, notes that she's quadrilingual, and reinforces those themes of care for others in the community, as well as Maria's maturity. I noted that continued theme of advocacy of pro-social motivation because it's always, I would say, a positive when you see that consistency across different materials, different aspects of an application to really getting that sense of who a student might be in our community. So I think we have a pretty strong sense of who Maria might be within the Red Brick community. So thank you, and I'll pass it off for our third and final candidate.
Awesome. Thank you. So we have Betty, last but not least. And so Betty is a female identifying student attending Shanghai Chinese American International School and is a Chinese national who is interested in finance, business, physics, and computational mathematics. So she is the most STEMmy of our three applicants that we're seeing. But again, remembering our profile that Red Brick does have engineering and a strong computer science program and things like that. So just something to keep in mind. When it comes to Betty, academically, she's a superstar, as we would call this kind of student. So she's in the AP curriculum. She's taking 15 APs, and she is an AP diploma candidate with scores of 4s and 5s on her self-reported exams. She has A's and A minuses, only one B plus, and that was in ninth grade, an upward trend from that B plus and some more A minuses too in the last year, almost all straight A's. So that upward trend again is something we love to see. And she also has a strong SAT score of a 1550. Again, you can see her competency, especially in mathematics, at that 800 perfect score and a TOEFL of 112. So very good test taker, very good student. And as you go through and read her file a little deeper, you can see that there are other pieces of her file that corroborate that strong academic focus. Extracurricularly, she does have a lot of STEM-focused activities, physics competition, summer research, a publication. She's been working with professors. She had a program at MIT. And she also kind of a hybrid of different things, but she has this science program that she started that's peer tutoring for basically women who are interested in STEM fields. So we are starting to see a little bit more of the personality and not just the career-focused aspects through these extracurriculars, because then we also get the sense of, wow, she loves music. She plays clarinet and cello. She's first chair in the orchestra. And she is the co-organizer of a senior music organization that puts on shows in the local area and on campus. And she also plays badminton. Doesn't say she's a leader, but it's exciting to see that she's putting herself out there in different ways. In her personal statement, Betty definitely talks in a very creative, artistic tone about how music and mathematics frame her life. And she's very proud of herself, but not in a way that feels overbearing. And I think a very humble and understandably, understatedly proud way. She's talking about how her, the gender roles that she's been subjected to, especially in STEM fields that she's very interested in, have not held her back from success and in fact have inspired her to try to pave the way for other women who are interested in going into STEM fields. And then the counselor recommendation, last but not least, corroborates all of this by sort of bringing it home. Calls her an academic superstar. She's in the most demanding curriculum available at the school, but also that she's independent. She's curious. She's a good person and human being. She challenges the status quo as a woman in STEM and then shares that love of STEM to other women. And she's not just a STEM student, even though that is what she wants to go into. That is not at the loss of her love for music or other pieces of herself. She's excellent not just in STEM, as you can see from her transcripts, but also in the humanities, in the social sciences, and in the arts as well. So altogether, in the gray, you can see I kind of did my little summaries of each part. And so normally we wouldn't speak for probably this long about one student, but hopefully that helps give you a better sense of each of these three applicants in a very short period of time.
Okay. So, thank you for saying that, Grace. Like usually when you guys are presenting committee, you're not giving as much context as you gave in this scenario, but it was really helpful to the counselors and parents and students that are on this call. So we're going to do a quick vote. And so you should be able to see it on if you're on Zoom, we should be able to see this vote. If you're on a different platform, feel free to chat somewhere who you would like to admit. And I know like time passed, so you might have forgotten applicants 1 and 2, but you have your material, so you can kind of take a look as well and kind of consider. And I give you we've had 40% people have voted, so I'm going to give it another second. While we're doing that, while we're voting, any kind of quick comments from our 4 panelists about things that you observed even while presenting the candidates and seeing some of the questions come in?
One of the things I liked, Gloria, and I think it's nice for students to see is that admissions officers are advocating for students, right? They have to make difficult decisions, but they're really looking for what brings the student alive, how they've shared their passion. it's not about picking kids apart and trying to analyze the weak points, right? There's a real professional commitment to finding strengths and to sharing them, into having a productive discussion based on how they could potentially contribute to a college or university. And so I think we're fortunate to see that. And even though difficult decisions need to be made, I think all of the professionals in this field are really striving to make the best decisions for students and for their institutions, even if that doesn't always lead to the outcomes everyone would hope for.
I was also just going to add, I know Libby's typing an answer, which you should look at in the Q&A, but there was a question about, are we not considering parent information? Because of the abbreviated nature of this case study, we aren't able to consider everything that we normally would consider. For example, we would normally read multiple letters of recommendation. We would read the school profile that explains what's available at the high school. So there are things that just aren't available in this sort of abbreviated way, but that isn't to say that everything is not considered. We're just trying to give this to you as an example in the best way we can, especially over a Zoom platform and within a limited amount of time, to make this an effective and hopefully helpful exercise for you. But do know that when it comes to parent info, it's something that we do, take into account. For example, the first student is a first generation student. Fareed Ahmed, right, is a first gen student. And so that is something that we would consider because that affects Fareed's ability to maybe have access to college application and preparation, right? And doesn't have someone who maybe he can go to for support in the same way as a student, as the other two students who are coming from CEO, attorney backgrounds and things like that when it comes to their parents and have higher ed degrees. So please know that we would normally consider that, and it's just for the sake of time that isn't something we're talking too deeply about at this moment.
Okay, so I'm going to end the poll. Last minute votes. About 70% of us have voted. I'm going to go ahead and end it so we could just have a discussion about it. All right, so it looks like on Zoom, and there's other platforms, so I'm not able to do the math that quickly, but on Zoom, the vote is to admit Yi, applicant 3 from Shanghai. So, but based on what I'm seeing on my other platform here, there was a top, like it was a really close. Applicant 2 was someone that people wanted to admit as well. And so what would you all do in your office if this was kind of the vote? Does it have to be like usually are you doing like in a unanimous kind of situation? Like what would it look like in your offices?
I mean, we like for it to be unanimous, but that's not always the reality. I looked at all of these and I was like, I could see cases for all. Like, I personally was struggling. I was like, both for Bowdoin and for Redbrook University, I was like, all of these students, I could see different arguments and cases to be made. Yeah, sometimes there are lengthy conversations because, and I think there was a earlier comment that was just like, in reality, we're not one. There could be space for multiple of these students. So I do want to just emphasize that as well. Yeah, again, we try to get to as much of a unanimous decision as possible, but recognizing like a simple majority is sometimes where we will land. And I think all of our teams recognize that at the end of the day, we're trying to make decisions that are kind of best for our institutions. And all of the students that we're talking about will be wonderful and contribute to our communities in a variety of different ways. So yes, sometimes there are tough decisions where, maybe we do need to lean into Maria rather than Yi, and people are, upset about not being able to admit Yi at this time, but we recognize that Maria is going to be a wonderful addition to the institution as well. So yes, we like unanimous, but sometimes simple majority is where we get, and the conversations can, yeah, be pretty in depth just to make sure that we're all understanding the contributions and kind of where how we're getting to the decision that we're getting to.
I think the other piece that we can't really easily duplicate in an exercise like this is understanding institutional priorities or needs, right? So if in a scenario like this, where let's say we're getting down to the very, very end, we have that one last admit we're going to make. What we don't know in this exercise is what did the other group of already admitted students look like? Maybe we're light in sociology and we're heavy in business. And that's really going to influence the decision we're going to make here because that is really going to make Maria shine. Or vice versa. We're looking very heavy in the humanities this year, but no one's been applying to the business school. So that could flip the decision we would ultimately make. And that I mentioned, we kind of go through this file review, and then we have a final committee of kind of senior leaders that make those final decisions that shape our class. And they're the group that is then really bringing in that institutional context, those institutional priorities, and looking at all of those numbers to make sure that the engineering faculty aren't mad at us because we've enrolled twice the number of engineers they can fit in their labs.
I think you guys said it really well. The only thing, I love to use metaphors if you haven't noticed by now, but let's imagine that the admission process in a class is like an orchestra, right? You can't have an orchestra of all saxophonists or just violinists. You need all of them to make a really good orchestra. And so when we are reviewing students, we are thinking of building an orchestra. And yeah, we might need 2 more oboe players, right? And so like Justin and Libby were both saying, it's much more complicated than can ever be conveyed in an hour session, but we hope that this gives you a good snapshot into how we construct our beautiful symphony orchestra at our schools.
And I would be remiss to note that I'm sure the real struggle for our admissions committee was that we did not have initial view interviews for these applicants, because that would have truly brought them alive and given us a sense of their personality and how they themselves could extemporaneously articulate their curiosity and things. But unfortunately, as creative as I could be in writing these cases, I could not figure out how to come up with 3 different initial view interviews for these candidates. So I absolutely
There will be
appreciate
another Tuesday talk where we can play a
there
few
will.
clips. I
Perhaps after some of my time with the AI faculties at these fantastic universities, we can have I can have avatars from my cases. I'd like to push our AO committee here. If we're going to come down to the wire and you need to vote, share your recommendation. We've heard the audience input. I'm curious where, in the final analysis, Libby, Grace, and Justin, for whom would you cast your vote?
I'll kick off. I would say I probably would have cast my vote for Maria. And largely, I would say that's again contextual on my part and understanding that your comparative literature major is pretty rare relative to your business major relative to your political science, your economics major. So I think that Maria, while all 3 of these candidates, and I think maybe Libby, you were the one that said this earlier, all 3 are very competitive. Like this is a difficult decision to make. I think all 3 are admissible. For me, Maria in context probably represented something a little bit more unique in terms of Red Brick's needs.
And I might just highlight, Justin, it's not simply that she picked a major that is perhaps less popular, because sometimes we do see students trying to strategically now pick comp lit to apply to Carnegie Mellon. It's the fact that she is fluent in 4 languages that makes her choice impressive, that there's quite a bit of substance to back that up.
Agreed. You see it in the activities, you see it in the essay, you see it in the recommendation. It wasn't just this selection on a drop down, but it was a selection that you then saw the story throughout the application. Agreed.
I probably also would have leaned into Maria. I have a really big soft spot for Farid, and that's not because that was the case that I presented, but maybe that's part of it. I saw a lot of I am a sucker for an upward trend, and the resiliency there, and I'll speak for Bowdoin, would have been a really compelling conversation. Freed would have gotten a lengthy conversation, and also with the Center for Global um, and Environmental Studies, and kind of thinking about those, like there's a lot of fit there, and the advocacy from the counselors. I always say the counselor recommendations, and I think there's a question about counselor recommendations that Grace is typing right now, or just recommendations in general. Additional weight or to outside letters that come from instructors or professors. Weight is probably not the best word. I mean, it's helpful additional context. That's what I always say for recommendations. It's an additional voice that helps us see you in a context that's not your school community. But all of us will probably have different recommendation requirements. The counselor recommendation, though, for Farid kind of helped me see, like, okay, yes, he had understandably a natural tough transition coming from school and a refugee camp, but he has hit the ground running and really found his stride. And that would be helpful. Unfortunately, I think there would still be enough questions and other really strong candidates that we would probably still lean into Maria. But I just want to say, like, Farid would get a really long conversation because of all of the pieces that he has that could be a really nice match for both Red Brick and Bowdoin. I'll speak for Bowdoin, but we'd probably admit Maria.
Yeah, on behalf of Red Brick, this is a really tough decision. And it's, again, hearkening to what Libby said, it's why it's great that we don't have to do 1-1-1 when it comes to decision making like this. I also lean towards Maria, but I also am a big fan of Betty Yee. Not also just because I wrote up her slide and read her file in the most depth, but I do think that all of them have compelling reasons to be admitted and great things that they could contribute to the community at Red Brick University. And that's why these sorts of decisions are so challenging. But I hope it helps to know that you do have human beings behind your application like us who are grappling with these tough decisions. We are not robots. We are not using AI. We are really looking at your file, trying to get to know and understand who you are before we make these very challenging decisions. And it also means that it's not always in your control how the committee reviews a file. There's all different factors at play, and this is a very stressful process. So know that if like whatever happens with your file at a certain school, it could be read a completely different way by a different institution, which has different priorities or different things that they're looking for in their student body. It's nothing against you. So I think that's really important to know. And hopefully by reading these three wonderful students, you can get a better sense of, oh, it's so complicated. It's not about one thing that set one student apart because we're all struggling to choose one. But again, on behalf of Red Brick, I'd probably choose Maria because there are different elements that are compelling as both a student and a community member and leader.
Well, this was awesome. And we have lots of other questions that are coming from this. And so please do email us and say, I want a Tuesday talk about such and such, because we've only just kind of touched on a lot of the components, and the application itself is, we're kind of confined in some level to the components that are included in an application. But as you can see, like, they're really trying to find that whole person in you. They're trying to get that whole story. And then there's that piece that's completely outside of your control, which is whether or not you are the violinist or the timpani player. Like, we don't know what they need that year, and that could change every year. And so you can't control that. You can only control who you are and how you're being seen. So lots of other questions. We will collect those questions and make sure that we fold them in to a follow-up and also another Tuesday Talk comment. I will say that there is a question about AI. I have lots to say about that. So go to some of my past talks, but also this is why I think the conversation is so important. That's why the interviews are so important. That's why these conversations are so important, because that human side of you being able to show your authentic self is what we're all about at Initial View. Thank you again, Justin, Libby, Grace, and Chris for joining me today. I know that it required waking up early or staying up late. So thank you for doing that with us. Please contact us if you have, excuse me, any questions, and we will see you at our next Tuesday Talk. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Gloria. And it is a word of solidarity to the students. I actually wrote all three cases, and I won't disclose my own personal preferences, but I will say, perhaps ironically, it was not actually the consensus reached by the committee. So even students should know that we put our best foot forward, and then we have to let the decisions fall where they may.
Yep. But there's a great school for all of you out there, and it's going to be
Absolutely.
fun. And it's going to be fun. And it's only just one more chapter in your awesome life that's ahead. Thank you again. Have a great night, great afternoon, great morning, wherever you are. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks, Gloria.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.